World War II was one of the most defining moments in human history. It wasn't just about battles and strategies. It was about people. From acts of bravery to shocking twists of fate, the war was full of stories that reveal the best and worst of humanity. In this video, we'll explore fascinating tales from the war, some you've heard of and others that might surprise you. Each one paints a vivid picture of the chaos, courage, and resilience of that era. In May 1940, over 300,000 Allied soldiers were trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk, France. Surrounded by German forces, their situation seemed hopeless. But what happened next is often called the miracle of Dunkirk. British civilians joined the Royal Navy in a massive evacuation effort. From fishing boats to yachts, over 800 vessels sailed across the English Channel to rescue the troops. This operation, called Operation Dynamo, lasted from May 26 to June 4, 1940. Despite constant German air attacks, the effort saved hundreds of thousands of lives, allowing the Allies to regroup and continue the fight. Nancy Wake, known as the White Mouse, was one of the most successful Allied spies during World War II. Born in New Zealand, she joined the French resistance and became a master of disguise and sabotage. In 1944, she parachuted into France to lead guerrilla warfare operations. Her most famous feat? Biking 500 kilometers in 72 hours to deliver crucial messages after the Nazis destroyed local communication lines. Her bravery earned her multiple medals, including the George Medal from Britain and the Croix de Guerre from France. Imagine an army that didn't exist, at least not in the traditional sense. The Ghost Army was a secret U.S. military unit tasked with deceiving German forces. This 1,100-member unit used inflatable tanks, fake radio transmissions, and sound effects to create the illusion of large armies. One of their most famous missions took place before the D-Day invasion in 1944, when they diverted German troops away from Normandy. The Ghost Army's creative tactics likely saved thousands of lives and shortened the war. Louis Zamperini, a former Olympic athlete, joined the U.S. Army Air Corps during the war. In 1943, his plane crashed into the Pacific Ocean, leaving him and two other crew members stranded on a life raft. They drifted for 47 days, surviving on rainwater and raw fish. After being captured by the Japanese, Zamperini endured brutal treatment in prison camps. His incredible resilience was later chronicled in the book and movie Unbroken. Zamperini's story is a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure unimaginable hardship. During World War II, the German military used the Enigma machine to send coded messages. Breaking this code seemed impossible until British mathematician Alan Turing and his team at Bletchley Park came into the picture. Using a machine called the bomb, Turing and his team cracked the Enigma code, giving the Allies a critical advantage. Historians estimate that this breakthrough shortened the war by at least 2 years, saving millions of lives. Turing's work laid the foundation for modern computing, making him a true war hero in an unconventional sense. For 872 days, the city of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, endured one of the longest and most brutal sieges in history. From September 1941 to January 1944, German and Finnish forces surrounded the city, cutting off supplies. Despite starvation and freezing temperatures, the people of Leningrad refused to surrender. Residents created victory gardens to grow food, and symphonies were performed to boost morale. Over 1 million people died, but the city's resilience became a symbol of Soviet strength. In March 1944, Allied prisoners of war at Stalag Luft III, a German POW camp, carried out one of the most daring escapes of the war. Using handmade tools, they dug 3 tunnels, codenamed Tom, Dick, and Harry, to escape. On the night of March 24th, 76 men crawled through a 30-foot deep tunnel to freedom. Unfortunately, only 3 managed to reach Allied territory. The story inspired the 1963 movie The Great Escape and remains a testament to ingenuity and determination in the face of adversity. The Night Witches was the nickname given to the all-female Soviet Air Force unit, the 588th Night Bomber Regiment. These women flew outdated biplanes on dangerous night missions, often turning off their engines to glide silently over enemy targets. Their bravery earned them the respect of their comrades and the fear of the Germans, who called them Night Witches. By the end of the war, they had flown over 23,000 missions, dropping 3,000 tons of bombs. Operation Mincemeat was one of the war's most ingenious deceptions. British intelligence planted fake invasion plans on a corpse and released it near the Spanish coast, hoping it would fall into German hands. The plan worked perfectly, convincing the Germans that the Allies would invade Greece instead of Sicily. This deception saved countless lives during the Sicilian invasion and showcased the creativity of Allied intelligence efforts. Before the war began, a rescue effort known as the Kindertransport saved nearly 10,000 Jewish children from Nazi-controlled areas. British families opened their homes to these young refugees, many of whom had to leave their parents behind. Though heartbreaking, the Kindertransport ensured that thousands of children survived the Holocaust. This effort highlights the power of compassion during dark times. In April 1943, Jewish residents of the Warsaw Ghetto staged a courageous uprising against the Nazi forces who planned to deport them to concentration camps. Though poorly armed and vastly outnumbered, the resistance fighters held off the German troops for nearly a month. This act of defiance became a powerful symbol of resistance and courage against tyranny. The USS Indianapolis delivered components for the atomic bomb to be dropped on Hiroshima. Shortly after completing its mission, the ship was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine in July 1945. Of the 1,196 crew members, around 900 survived the initial sinking but were left stranded in shark-infested waters. Only 316 were rescued days later, making it one of the deadliest maritime disasters in U.S. naval history. During the Battle of the Bulge, the town of Bastogne in Belgium became a critical focal point. Surrounded by German forces in December 1944, American troops held their ground despite being outnumbered and undersupplied. General Anthony McAuliffe's famous one-word reply, "Nuts," to a German surrender ultimatum symbolized the resilience of the Allied forces. The siege was lifted on December 26, 1944, when reinforcements arrived. The Battle of Midway, fought in June 1942, was a turning point in the Pacific Theater. The U.S. Navy, using intelligence gained from codebreakers, ambushed the Japanese fleet near Midway Atoll. The battle resulted in the loss of 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, shifting the balance of power in the Pacific and marking the beginning of Japan's decline. In January 1945, U.S. Army Rangers and Filipino guerrillas carried out a daring rescue mission at the Cabanatuan POW camp in the Philippines. Over 500 Allied prisoners, who had endured years of brutal conditions, were liberated in this meticulously planned raid. The mission showcased the bravery and cooperation between American and Filipino forces. The Battle of Britain was the first major campaign fought entirely by air forces. From July to October 1940, the Royal Air Force, RAF, defended the UK against the German Luftwaffe. Using radar technology and superior tactics, the RAF successfully repelled the German assault, preventing a planned invasion of Britain. Prime Minister Winston Churchill famously said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." The White Rose was a non-violent resistance group in Nazi Germany led by students Sophie Scholl, Hans Scholl, and Christoph Probst. They distributed leaflets calling for passive resistance against Hitler's regime. In February 1943, they were caught and executed, but their courage inspired future generations and became a symbol of moral resistance. Led by Josip Broz Tito, the Yugoslav partisans were one of the most effective resistance movements during the war. Operating in rugged terrain, they carried out guerrilla warfare against Axis forces. Their efforts tied down significant enemy resources and contributed to the liberation of Yugoslavia. Tito's leadership earned him recognition as one of the key resistance leaders of the war. In August 1944, after years of German occupation, Paris was liberated by Allied forces and French resistance fighters. General Charles de Gaulle led the triumphant parade down the Champs-Élysées, marking a significant moment in the liberation of Europe. The event revitalized French morale and solidified the resistance's role in defeating the Axis. On August 6th and 9th, 1945, the U.S. dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, respectively. These bombings resulted in unprecedented destruction and loss of life, leading to Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945. While controversial, the bombings marked the end of World War II and ushered in the nuclear age. André Borel was a French resistance fighter and member of the Special Operations Executive SOE. In 1943, she was captured and sent to the Ravensbrück concentration camp. Her ingenuity led to multiple sabotage operations before her capture. Though she ultimately perished in the camp, her legacy remains a symbol of courage and determination for those who resisted tyranny. The Japanese whaling ship Kanen Maru, while on an expedition to Antarctica, encountered Allied forces. After being repurposed by the Japanese Navy, the ship served as a reconnaissance vessel. The Allies intercepted communications and sunk the ship in late 1942, making it one of the lesser-known naval skirmishes of the war. Fought in northeast India, the battles of Impol and Kohima were pivotal in halting Japanese advances into British India. From March to July 1944, British and Indian troops, with assistance from local Naga tribes, fought off repeated Japanese attacks. The victory was considered one of the greatest feats in British military history. The British Camouflage Division, nicknamed the Chameleons, developed innovative techniques to hide military equipment and vehicles. Using paint, nets, and even inflatable tanks, they played a crucial role in deceiving Axis forces. One of their most famous operations involved camouflaging the Suez Canal to confuse German bombers. During Christmas 1944, amidst the Battle of the Bulge, some German and American soldiers temporarily ceased fighting. Small groups exchanged cigarettes and food, and even shared stories of home. Though brief and isolated, the moments of humanity during this brutal battle left a lasting impression on those involved. Operation Paperclip was a secret U.S. program to recruit German scientists after the war. Many of these scientists, including Wernher von Braun, played significant roles in the development of U.S. aerospace technology. While controversial, the program showcased the complexities of post-war politics and technological advancement. In one of the war's most unusual battles, American and German troops fought together to defend a castle in Austria from an SS attack. The castle housed high-profile French prisoners, and this unlikely alliance ensured their survival. The battle, fought in May 1945, was one of the last in Europe. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, known as Lady Death, was one of the deadliest snipers in history. Serving in the Red Army, she recorded 309 confirmed kills, including 36 enemy snipers. Her skills and bravery made her a Soviet hero and an inspiration to soldiers on the Eastern Front. While the large-scale evacuation at Dunkirk is well known, smaller operations involved civilians rescuing stranded soldiers in secret. In one instance, French fishermen worked tirelessly to ferry soldiers to safety, often under heavy fire. Their bravery ensured hundreds more escaped. Known as the greatest raid of all, Operation Chariot targeted the Nazi-held dry dock in Saint-Nazaire, France. British commandos rammed an explosives-packed ship into the dock, disabling it for the rest of the war. The daring mission showcased the ingenuity and courage of the Allied forces. The Battle of Narvik in northern Norway was a crucial naval and ground engagement during the early stages of the war. British, French, and Norwegian forces fought against German troops in an attempt to control the vital port. Despite heavy losses on both sides, the Allies' effort delayed Germany's advance in the Arctic region and protected crucial iron ore supplies for a time. During the Nazi occupation of Poland, Jan and Antonina Zabinski, the keepers of the Warsaw Zoo, used their facility to hide Jewish refugees. They smuggled people into the zoo and hid them in animal cages and underground tunnels. Their bravery saved hundreds of lives, and their story was later told in the book and film The Zookeeper's Wife. The Battle of Tarawa, fought in November 1943, was one of the bloodiest conflicts in the Pacific theater. U.S. Marines faced fierce Japanese resistance while storming the heavily fortified atoll. Despite devastating losses, the victory provided a critical stepping stone for the Allies' island-hopping campaign. Operation Market Garden was a bold Allied plan to capture bridges across the Netherlands, paving the way for an invasion of Germany. Although partially successful, the operation faltered at Arnhem, where British paratroopers faced overwhelming German forces. The phrase "a bridge too far" originated from this operation, symbolizing the campaign's ambition and eventual failure. In April 1945, British forces liberated the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in Germany. They found tens of thousands of starving and dying prisoners, highlighting the horrors of the Holocaust. The liberation of the camp became a pivotal moment in documenting Nazi atrocities and ensuring that the world would never forget. The Battle of the Coral Sea was a major naval engagement fought between the Allies and Japan. It was the first battle in history where aircraft carriers played the central role, and the opposing ships never sighted each other. Although both sides suffered losses, the battle halted Japan's advance toward Australia. Before World War II formally began, the Japanese invasion of Nanjing, resulted in one of the most infamous atrocities of the 20th century. During this time, individuals like John Rabe, a German businessman, established safety zones to protect Chinese civilians. His efforts saved thousands of lives amidst the massacre. Though discovered before the war, penicillin became widely produced during World War II, saving countless soldiers' lives. The mass production of this wonder drug began in the early 1940s, revolutionizing medicine and drastically reducing deaths from infected wounds. Brazil joined the Allies in 1942, and its forces contributed significantly to the war effort. In a lesser-known incident, the Brazilian Navy intercepted and sunk a German U-boat attacking the São Paulo prison ship carrying Allied prisoners. The event demonstrated Brazil's resolve in supporting the Allied cause. After Italy's armistice in 1943, partisan groups emerged to fight against German occupation. These groups, composed of civilians, soldiers, and political dissidents, carried out sabotage missions, assassinated enemy officers, and supported Allied operations. Their efforts were vital in weakening Axis control in Italy. The Bielski partisans were a group of Jewish resistance fighters who saved over 1,200 Jews from Nazi persecution. Operating in the forests of Belarus, the group, led by Tuvia Bielski and his brothers, built a hidden community that included women, children, and the elderly. Their bravery and resourcefulness turned them into heroes of survival. In November 1942, as German forces advanced into unoccupied France, the French Navy scuttled its fleet in Toulon to prevent it from falling into Axis hands. Over 70 ships were sunk in one of the most dramatic acts of self-sabotage during the war, denying Germany a major naval advantage. The Battle of Anzio was a crucial Allied amphibious operation in Italy. From January to June 1944, Allied forces faced fierce German resistance, but eventually broke through, paving the way for the liberation of Rome. This battle showcased the determination and sacrifices of soldiers on both sides. The Manhattan Project was the secret U.S. research initiative that developed the atomic bomb. Led by physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, the project culminated in the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The scientific breakthroughs and ethical debates surrounding the project continue to resonate to this day. Monte Cassino, an ancient monastery in Italy, became the site of one of the most intense battles of the war. Between January and May 1944, Allied forces launched multiple assaults to break German defenses. The eventual victory was pivotal in the campaign to liberate Italy, though it came at a high cost. After the war, key Nazi leaders were tried for war crimes in the Nuremberg trials. This landmark legal process established precedents for international law and held individuals accountable for crimes against humanity. The trials remain a symbol of justice and the importance of documenting atrocities. In early 1945, as the Allies closed in on Germany, thousands of concentration camp prisoners were forced on death marches to evade liberation. These grueling treks, often conducted in freezing conditions, resulted in thousands of deaths, but also stories of incredible endurance and survival. Australian soldiers earned the nickname Rats of Tobruk for their dogged defense of the Libyan port city against German forces. From April to November 1941, they held off Rommel's Afrika Korps in one of the longest sieges of the war, demonstrating extraordinary resilience. The Wilhelm Gustloff, a German ship carrying civilians and wounded soldiers, was torpedoed by a Soviet submarine in January 1945. Over 9,000 people perished in the sinking, making it the deadliest maritime disaster in history. The tragedy remains a stark reminder of the war's human cost. Operation Hannibal was one of the largest evacuations in history, as German forces transported over 1 million civilians and soldiers from East Prussia to safety in the final months of the war. Despite facing constant attacks from Soviet forces, the operation showcased the desperation and logistical prowess of the German military. The Arctic convoys were a series of missions by Allied ships to deliver essential supplies to the Soviet Union. These perilous journeys faced extreme weather, ice, and constant attacks from German U-boats and aircraft. Despite heavy losses, the convoys were vital to the Soviet war effort and a testament to Allied cooperation. The Japanese battleship Yamato, the largest ever built, embarked on a one-way mission in April 1945 to defend Okinawa. Without enough fuel to return, it was sunk by American planes before reaching its target. The loss marked the symbolic end of Japan's naval power. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, was killed when American fighter planes intercepted his aircraft in April 1943. The mission, called Operation Vengeance, was based on intercepted Japanese communications. His death dealt a significant blow to Japanese morale. Operation Pastorius was a failed German mission to sabotage American infrastructure. 8 Nazi agents landed in the U.S. by submarine, but were quickly caught due to betrayal by one of their own. The mission highlighted the effectiveness of American counterintelligence. The Warsaw Uprising was a major resistance effort by Polish forces to liberate the city from German occupation. Though the resistance held out for 63 days, they were ultimately overwhelmed. The uprising remains a symbol of Polish courage and determination. Pilot Vince Coleman saved hundreds during the Halifax explosion by warning an incoming train of the danger. Though the explosion predates World War II, its lessons in disaster response were applied during the war, particularly in Allied maritime strategy. The French submarine Surcouf was the largest of its time, but was plagued by misfortune. It disappeared in 1942 under mysterious circumstances, sparking theories of sabotage, collision, or enemy attack. Its loss remains an enduring mystery. American forces liberated Dachau concentration camp in April 1945, uncovering horrific conditions. The event profoundly affected soldiers and highlighted the importance of documenting Nazi atrocities to ensure justice and remembrance. The Battle of Polilliu was one of the bloodiest in the Pacific Theater. Fought over 2 months, it saw staggering casualties as U.S. Marines faced entrenched Japanese forces. The battle tested the resolve and endurance of American troops. In December 1943, an Allied raid accidentally released mustard gas stored on ships in Bari, Italy. Hundreds of soldiers and civilians were exposed, leading to many deaths. The incident remained classified for years to avoid public backlash. The North African campaign was pivotal in driving Axis forces out of Africa. With battles like El Alamein, the Allies secured critical supply routes and set the stage for the invasion of Italy. It showcased the strategic brilliance of leaders like General Montgomery. A group of American soldiers became isolated on Leyte Island in the Philippines. Despite limited supplies and constant enemy attacks, they held their position until reinforcements arrived, exemplifying grit and determination. Major Digby Tatum Warder became famous for carrying an umbrella into battle during Operation Market Garden. He used it to rally troops and even disabled a German vehicle with it. His eccentric bravery made him a legend among Allied forces. After the Frank family was captured, meet Geese preserved in Frank's diary. The diary became one of the most poignant accounts of life under Nazi occupation, providing a human face to the horrors of the Holocaust. During World War II, Navajo soldiers played a crucial role in Allied communications. Using their native language, they created an unbreakable code that the Japanese were never able to crack. Their efforts were instrumental in securing victories in the Pacific Theater. In September 1943, German commandos, led by Otto Skorzeny, staged a daring raid to rescue Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, who had been imprisoned by his own government. The mission, conducted in the Gran Sasso Mountains, was a major propaganda victory for Germany. The Battle of Guadalcanal was a turning point in the Pacific War. U.S. forces fought for 6 months to wrest control of the island from Japanese forces. The victory marked the beginning of the Allies' offensive in the Pacific. Japanese kamikaze pilots carried out suicide missions to crash their planes into Allied ships. While controversial, these attacks showcased the desperation of the Japanese military and the sacrifice of its soldiers during the final years of the war. Operation Valkyrie was a plot by German officers to assassinate Adolf Hitler and overthrow the Nazi regime. The attempt, led by Claus von Stauffenberg, failed when a bomb planted in Hitler's bunker only injured him. The conspirators were executed, but their courage is remembered as a symbol of resistance. The Battle of Iwo Jima was one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific. U.S. Marines fought to capture the island's strategic airfields. The iconic image of soldiers raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi became a symbol of American determination. Malta, a small island in the Mediterranean, endured one of the longest sieges of the war. Despite constant bombing by Axis forces, the island's defenders held firm, earning the entire population the George Cross for bravery. The Battle of Okinawa was the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific Theater. The fierce fighting resulted in massive casualties on both sides and was a key factor in the decision to use atomic bombs to end the war. The Lend-Lease Act allowed the U.S. to supply Allied nations with weapons, vehicles, and other resources before officially entering the war. This program was critical in bolstering the Allies' ability to resist Axis aggression. The German pocket battleship Graf Spee was cornered by British ships off the coast of Uruguay. Rather than face capture, the crew scuttled the ship in Montevideo's harbor, ending its threat to Allied shipping. Soviet forces liberated the Auschwitz concentration camp in January 1945, revealing the full extent of Nazi atrocities. The event shocked the world and became a defining moment in the documentation of the Holocaust. After the war, the U.S. recruited German scientists, including rocket engineer Wernher von Braun, to work on American projects. This controversial operation advanced U.S. aerospace and military technology during the Cold War. The British 14th Army, known as the Forgotten Army, fought a grueling campaign against Japanese forces in Burma. Their efforts were crucial in liberating Southeast Asia from Japanese occupation. Using their unique language, Comanche code talkers provided secure communications for Allied forces during key battles in Europe. Their contributions were critical in ensuring operational security. Hidden deep in the forests of Slovenia, a secret partisan hospital treated wounded resistance fighters and Allied soldiers. Despite being surrounded by Axis forces, it remained undetected throughout the war. The Soviet T-34 tank was a game-changer in armored warfare. Its design combined firepower, mobility, and durability, making it a key asset in the Red Army's victories on the Eastern Front. Finnish sniper Simo Häyhä, nicknamed the White Death, killed over 500 Soviet soldiers during the Winter War. His skill and stealth made him one of the deadliest snipers in history. The Battle of Kursk was the largest tank battle in history. Soviet forces defeated the German offensive, marking a turning point on the Eastern Front and solidifying their momentum toward Berlin. The Battle of Arnhem was part of Operation Market Garden, an ambitious Allied plan to secure key bridges in the Netherlands. British paratroopers faced fierce German resistance, leading to a prolonged and bloody conflict. Although the operation failed, the bravery of the troops remains legendary. The German battleship Bismarck was one of the most powerful warships of its time. After sinking HMS Hood, the Royal Navy hunted it relentlessly. On May 27, 1941, British forces sank the Bismarck, marking a significant naval victory for the Allies. Władysław Szpilman, a Polish pianist, survived the Holocaust by hiding in the Warsaw Ghetto and later in the ruins of the city. His story was immortalized in the movie The Pianist, showcasing the resilience of the human spirit through music. The Battle of Saipan was a critical Pacific theater conflict, giving the Allies a base to launch attacks on Japan. The fierce fighting saw Japanese civilians coerced into mass suicides by propaganda, underscoring the tragic consequences of war. A group of Allied art historians and museum curators worked to recover priceless cultural artifacts looted by the Nazis. Known as the Monuments Men, their efforts preserved countless treasures, protecting Europe's cultural heritage for future generations. The Battle of the Bulge was Germany's last major offensive on the Western Front. Fought in the Ardennes, the surprise attack created a bulge in the Allied lines. Despite initial setbacks, the Allies ultimately prevailed, hastening the end of the war. Civilian vessels, dubbed little ships, played a crucial role in rescuing soldiers from Dunkirk. These privately owned boats braved treacherous waters and enemy fire, symbolizing the unity and courage of the British people. The Burma Railway, also known as the Death Railway, was built by Allied prisoners of war under brutal conditions. Thousands died during its construction, but their resilience and solidarity in the face of hardship remain inspiring. After years of occupation, Paris was liberated in August 1944. French resistance fighters and Allied forces joined to reclaim the city, marking a pivotal moment in the liberation of Europe and a resurgence of French pride. Japan launched over 9,000 balloon bombs across the Pacific, targeting North America. While largely ineffective, the bombs demonstrated Japan's ingenuity and reach during the war. The Battle of Tarawa marked the first American offensive in the Central Pacific. The intense, bloody fighting demonstrated the challenges of amphibious warfare, but paved the way for future victories. A Soviet spy ring used a hollowed-out nickel to pass messages during and after World War II. The discovery of this espionage tool highlighted the intricate web of Cold War intelligence battles rooted in the war. Eddie Chapman, a British double agent, worked for both the Nazis and MI5. His daring exploits and deception campaigns contributed significantly to Allied success, including sabotaging German operations. In April 1943, Jewish resistance fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto staged a courageous uprising against the Nazis. Though ultimately crushed, their defiance became a powerful symbol of resistance and courage. The Battle of Midway was a decisive naval engagement that turned the tide of the war in the Pacific. American forces, forewarned by intelligence, ambushed the Japanese fleet, securing a critical victory. Allied airmen captured by the Nazis were sent to Buchenwald concentration camp instead of POW camps. Despite brutal conditions, they survived and were later liberated, a testament to human resilience. The daring raid on the docks of Saint-Nazaire in France saw British commandos destroy key facilities using a ship packed with explosives. Known as the greatest raid of all, it crippled German naval operations. Jack Churchill, a British officer, famously fought with a longbow, bagpipes, and a sword. His eccentric bravery, including leading charges with his bagpipes blaring, made him a legend of unconventional warfare. The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest continuous military campaign of World War II. Allied forces struggled to secure vital shipping lanes while battling German U-boats. Advances in sonar, radar, and tactics ultimately turned the tide, ensuring the steady flow of troops and supplies. Australian and Allied troops defended the Libyan port of Tobruk against German forces led by Erwin Rommel. Dubbed the Rats of Tobruk, these soldiers endured 8 months of constant attack, demonstrating immense courage and resilience. A group of German students, known as the White Rose, distributed anti-Nazi leaflets and advocated for nonviolent resistance. Though executed for their actions, their legacy remains a symbol of moral courage against tyranny. The D-Day invasion, known as Operation Overlord, marked the largest amphibious assault in history. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, beginning the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi control. Fought over several months in Italy, the Battle of Monte Cassino involved intense fighting between Allied and Axis forces. The eventual victory opened the road to Rome and highlighted the determination of Allied troops. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea, American pilots shot down over 600 Japanese aircraft. The overwhelming victory decimated Japan's carrier-based air power and paved the way for Allied dominance in the Pacific. The Buchenwald concentration camp was liberated by U.S. forces in April 1945. The horrifying conditions and survivor testimonies underscored the atrocities of the Holocaust, galvanizing global resolve to ensure justice. The Battle of Leyte Gulf was the largest naval battle in history. Fought off the Philippines, it marked the effective end of the Imperial Japanese Navy as a fighting force. Operation Dragoon was the Allied invasion of southern France. Complementing the Normandy landings, the operation helped liberate France and stretch German forces thin, contributing to their eventual defeat. In retaliation for Allied bombings of German cities, the Luftwaffe targeted British cultural landmarks. Named after German travel guides, the Baedeker raids aimed to demoralize civilians, but only strengthened British resolve. Fought between the Soviet Union and Japan, this little-known battle was a decisive Soviet victory. It ended Japanese expansion into Mongolia and secured the USSR's eastern borders, allowing a focus on Europe. Polish resistance fighters launched an uprising to liberate Warsaw from German occupation. Despite being outnumbered and under-equipped, they held out for 63 days, becoming a symbol of defiance against tyranny. Operation Pheasant aimed to liberate southern Netherlands from German control. The successful campaign included Dutch resistance contributions, showcasing the importance of local support in the Allied war effort. When the Nazis planned to deport Denmark's Jewish population, Danish citizens organized a massive rescue operation. They smuggled over 7,000 Jews to neutral Sweden, saving nearly all of Denmark's Jewish community. The capture of the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen allowed U.S. forces to cross the Rhine River into Germany. This pivotal event accelerated the Allied advance into the heart of the Third Reich. A U.S. Navy blimp crashed in California without its crew, who mysteriously disappeared. The ghost blimp remains an unsolved mystery, sparking speculation about their fate. Led by Josip Broz Tito, Yugoslav partisans waged a guerrilla war against Axis forces. Their efforts tied down significant German resources and contributed to the liberation of Yugoslavia. The waters around Guadalcanal became known as Iron Bottom Sound due to the number of ships sunk during the campaign. The fierce naval battles marked a turning point in the Pacific theater. The Axis siege of Sevastopol was one of the longest and bloodiest battles on the Eastern Front. The city's heroic defense delayed German advances into the Caucasus. Norwegian commandos sabotaged a heavy water plant in Telemark, Norway, hindering Nazi nuclear weapon development. This daring mission remains one of the most celebrated acts of sabotage in the war. The Battle of the Coral Sea was a groundbreaking naval engagement where opposing fleets never saw each other. Aircraft carriers played a pivotal role, and the battle marked a strategic Allied victory that set the stage for Midway. In a secret Nazi operation, counterfeit British banknotes were printed to destabilize the British economy. This operation was led by SS officer Bernhard Kruger, and while it didn't achieve its intended goals, it produced millions of counterfeit pounds. In New York, a Soviet spy used a hollowed-out nickel to pass messages. Discovered accidentally by a paperboy, the coin revealed intricate espionage techniques used during and after the war. Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev became a legend during the Battle of Stalingrad, reportedly killing over 225 enemy soldiers. His duels with German snipers symbolized the ferocity of urban warfare. The German submarine U-65 was reportedly cursed, with multiple crew members dying under mysterious circumstances before its deployment. It was eventually sunk by a British submarine, adding to its eerie legend. Japanese kamikaze pilots carried out suicide missions against Allied ships. While controversial, these acts showed the desperation and determination of the Japanese military during the war's final years. Composed primarily of Jewish refugees who fled Nazi Germany, the Ritchie Boys provided critical intelligence by interrogating prisoners and analyzing enemy strategies. Their contributions were instrumental to the Allied war effort. The Siege of Budapest was one of the longest and bloodiest sieges of World War II. Soviet forces encircled the city, leading to a grueling battle that lasted over 100 days and devastated Hungary's capital. As the Third Reich collapsed, a train filled with gold, art, and other valuables disappeared in Poland. The so-called Nazi gold train has never been found, fueling countless treasure hunts and conspiracy theories. The Battle of Midway was a pivotal naval battle where the U.S. Navy decisively defeated Japan's fleet. Forewarned by codebreakers, American forces sank 4 Japanese carriers, turning the tide in the Pacific Theater. When U.S. forces liberated Dachau concentration camp, they uncovered horrific conditions. The liberation highlighted the atrocities of the Holocaust and served as evidence during the Nuremberg trials. The Axis siege of Sevastopol was a brutal battle on the Eastern Front. Soviet forces resisted for 8 months before the city fell, delaying German advances and showcasing the Red Army's tenacity. Norwegian commandos sabotaged a Nazi heavy water plant in Telemark, hindering Germany's nuclear weapon ambitions. The operation remains one of the most successful sabotage missions of the war. A group of German Jewish refugees, known as the Ritchie Boys, provided critical intelligence to the Allies. Their language skills and cultural knowledge made them invaluable in interrogating prisoners and interpreting documents. Built by Allied POWs and Asian laborers under brutal Japanese oversight, the Burma Railway claimed thousands of lives. Known as the Death Railway, it became a symbol of human suffering and resilience. This group of Allied art historians and soldiers recovered priceless artwork stolen by the Nazis. Their efforts preserved Europe's cultural heritage, saving masterpieces from destruction. Polish resistance fighters launched a 63-day rebellion against German forces, hoping for Soviet support that never came. The uprising, though unsuccessful, remains a powerful symbol of resistance. Led by Josip Broz Tito, Yugoslav partisans waged a fierce guerrilla campaign against Axis forces. Their efforts significantly contributed to the liberation of Yugoslavia. The Wilhelm Gustloff, a German ship carrying civilians and military personnel, was torpedoed by a Soviet submarine. Over 9,000 people died, making it the deadliest maritime disaster in history. After World War II, The United States recruited over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians, including Wernher von Braun, under Operation Paperclip. These individuals contributed to major advancements in aerospace and military technology during the Cold War. Known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, this naval battle decimated Japanese air power. Over 600 Japanese planes were destroyed, paving the way for Allied victories in the Pacific. Anne Frank and her family were discovered in their secret annex after being betrayed by an unknown informant. Her diary, published posthumously, became a powerful testament to life during the Holocaust. The iconic image of U.S. Marines raising the flag on Mount Suribachi symbolizes the fierce battle for Iwo Jima. The island's capture provided a critical base for Allied forces. The firebombing of Dresden resulted in massive destruction and loss of life. The controversial raid remains a debated topic in discussions of wartime ethics. Italian partisans played a crucial role in undermining Axis control. Their efforts, including sabotage and intelligence gathering, helped liberate Italy from Nazi occupation. Scapa Flow, a key naval base in Scotland, housed a ghost fleet of sunken ships scuttled by German forces in World War I. During World War II, it served as a vital point for British naval operations. This daring British raid attempted to assassinate German General Erwin Rommel in North Africa. Although the mission failed, it showcased the boldness of Allied special operations. In the rugged mountains of Italy, Allied and Axis forces engaged in brutal battles. The treacherous terrain and harsh weather made this front one of the most challenging of the war. An elite Australian commando unit, Z Special Unit, carried out covert missions in the Pacific, including the successful raid on Singapore Harbor using stealth kayaks. The Arctic convoys transported vital supplies to the Soviet Union through perilous waters. Despite constant attacks by German U-boats and aircraft, these missions were crucial to the Eastern Front. Famed for their bravery, Gurkha soldiers from Nepal fought valiantly in Europe. Their actions in Italy and beyond earned them widespread respect among Allied forces. British forces liberated the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, uncovering harrowing conditions. The discovery of the camp highlighted the horrors of the Holocaust. The Battle of Tarawa demonstrated the challenges of amphibious warfare. Despite heavy casualties, the U.S. secured the atoll, providing a critical foothold in the Pacific. A massive U.S. air and naval attack on Truk Lagoon devastated the Japanese base, sinking dozens of ships and crippling their Pacific operations. Malta endured constant bombing from Axis forces, but remained a vital Allied stronghold. The island's resilience earned it the George Cross for bravery. Australian troops defending Tobruk withstood repeated German assaults, earning the nickname Rats of Tobruk. Their determination inspired Allied forces worldwide. This grueling series of battles in Italy saw Allied forces overcome entrenched German defenses. The eventual victory opened the road to Rome. Covert Axis agents conducted sabotage and espionage within Allied nations. Their actions fueled paranoia and heightened counterintelligence efforts. A U.S. Navy blimp crashed in California without its crew, who mysteriously disappeared. Known as the Ghost Blimp, its empty gondola fueled speculation and intrigue about the crew's fate, which remains unsolved. In the Battle of Stalingrad, Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev faced off against German sniper Major Erwin Koenig. The duel lasted days in the ruins of the city, ending with Zaitsev's victory and cementing his legend. Bill Millen, a Scottish soldier, played bagpipes as his comrades stormed the beaches of Normandy. His fearless music boosted morale, earning him the nickname Mad Piper and a place in D-Day history. Czech resistance fighters Jan Kubis and Josef Gabčík assassinated Reinhard Heydrich, one of the architects of the Holocaust in Prague. The mission sparked brutal Nazi reprisals, but remains a symbol of resistance. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea, U.S. pilots destroyed over 600 Japanese planes, crippling Japan's air power. The lopsided victory earned its nickname and solidified Allied dominance in the Pacific. One of the longest and bloodiest sieges of World War II, the Battle of Budapest lasted over 100 days. Soviet forces encircled the city, leading to intense street fighting and heavy casualties. The sinking of the German ship Wilhelm Gustloff by a Soviet submarine remains the deadliest maritime disaster in history, with over 9,000 lives lost. The ship carried soldiers, refugees, and civilians fleeing the advancing Red Army. Composed of Jewish refugees from Nazi Germany, the Ritchie boys interrogated prisoners and gathered intelligence for the Allies. Their contributions were instrumental in key victories, including D-Day. Norwegian commandos sabotaged a Nazi heavy water plant in Telemark, Norway, crippling Germany's nuclear ambitions. The daring mission is celebrated as one of the greatest acts of sabotage. Though predating World War II, the Japanese invasion of Nanking showed the brutality to come. Some diplomats, like John Rabe, established safe zones, saving thousands of Chinese civilians from the infamous massacre. Operation Jedburgh was a top-secret Allied mission involving three-person teams parachuting into occupied Europe to assist resistance groups. These teams, composed of British, American, and French operatives, disrupted German communications and coordinated local uprisings during critical moments like the D-Day invasion. The Siege of Impol in northeast India was a decisive victory for the Allies against Japanese forces. Lasting from March to July 1944, it marked the turning point of the Burma campaign, with the Allies breaking Japan's advance into India. The Yamato, the largest battleship ever built, was sent on a one-way mission to defend Okinawa in April 1945. Overwhelmed by American airstrikes, the ship was sunk before reaching its target, symbolizing the end of Japan's naval dominance. Violette Sabo, a British-French SOE agent, carried out dangerous missions in occupied France before being betrayed and captured by the Gestapo. Despite brutal torture, she refused to reveal information, becoming a symbol of courage and resistance. In September 1943, German commandos, led by Otto Skorzeny, executed a daring raid to rescue Benito Mussolini, who had been imprisoned by his own government. The operation, conducted in the Gran Sasso Mountains, was a propaganda coup for Hitler. The Alamo Scouts were an elite U.S. reconnaissance unit that carried out covert missions in the Pacific Theater. Their most famous operation involved rescuing over 500 Allied POWs from a Japanese camp in the Philippines without a single casualty. On D-Day, British glider troops captured Pegasus Bridge in Normandy, preventing German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. This operation, known as Dead Stick, was critical to the success of the Allied landings. The USS Tang sank over 30,000 tons of enemy ships before being struck by its own malfunctioning torpedo during its final patrol. Most of the crew perished, but a few survived to become POWs in Japan. The Battle of Monte Cassino in Italy saw fierce fighting as the Allies attempted to breach German defenses. After months of combat and heavy casualties, the Allies finally captured the monastery, opening the road to Rome. Led by students in Nazi Germany, the White Rose Resistance movement distributed leaflets calling for opposition to Hitler. Their bravery cost them their lives, but their actions inspired others to resist tyranny. In northeast India, the battles of Kohima and Impol were pivotal in halting the Japanese advance into the Indian subcontinent. The grueling combat in mountainous terrain lasted from March to July 1944. Despite being outnumbered, Allied forces held their ground, marking the turning point of the Burma campaign. In one of the most daring raids of the war, British commandos launched Operation Chariot to destroy the Normandy dry dock at Saint-Nazaire in German-occupied France. Using a ship packed with explosives, they successfully crippled the dock, preventing its use by the German Navy. The British 14th Army, known as the Forgotten Army, fought in harsh jungle conditions to reclaim Burma from Japanese forces. Despite the immense challenges, Their efforts were crucial in the Allied victory in Southeast Asia. In the dense forests of Belarus, Soviet partisans waged a guerrilla war against German occupiers. Their sabotage efforts, including derailing trains and ambushing convoys, disrupted German supply lines and inspired resistance across Europe. The Red Ball Express was a vital supply chain operated by Allied forces after the D-Day landings. Composed mostly of African-American drivers, the convoy delivered crucial supplies to the front lines, ensuring the success of the Allied advance in France. Polish officer Witold Pilecki voluntarily infiltrated Auschwitz to gather intelligence on Nazi atrocities. He organized resistance within the camp and smuggled reports to the Allies, becoming one of the first to reveal the horrors of the Holocaust. The Battle of Anzio was a bloody campaign in Italy where Allied forces launched an amphibious assault to outflank German defenses. Despite fierce resistance and heavy casualties, the operation eventually led to the liberation of Rome. In preparation for a potential German invasion, British forces built a secret observation post in Gibraltar's Rock. Known as Operation Tracer, the plan involved sealing a team inside to monitor enemy movements, showcasing the lengths the Allies were willing to go to for intelligence. The B-24 bomber Lady Be Good disappeared during a mission over North Africa. Years later, it was discovered in the Libyan desert, revealing the crew's tragic attempts to survive after their plane went down. Though more famous in the Vietnam War, the tactics of the siege mirrored those used in key battles during World War II, such as the defense of Bastogne. It highlights the enduring lessons learned from World War II engagements. Italian partisans played a critical role in undermining German occupation. They carried out sabotage missions, provided intelligence to the Allies, and helped liberate cities like Florence and Milan. The Arctic convoys transported essential supplies from Allied nations to the Soviet Union through icy waters. Braving sub-zero temperatures and constant attacks from German U-boats, these missions were vital to the Eastern Front's success. As the Netherlands faced famine during the final months of the war, Allied planes carried out Operation Manna, dropping food supplies to starving civilians. This act of compassion saved countless lives. Captured soldiers and civilians endured brutal death marches, particularly in the Pacific Theater. One infamous example is the Bataan Death March, where thousands perished due to exhaustion, starvation, and abuse. The 1st Special Service Force, nicknamed the Black Devils, was a joint Canadian-American commando unit. Known for their stealth and effectiveness, they played a key role in campaigns in Italy and France. Part of Operation Market Garden, the Battle of Arnhem aimed to secure key bridges in the Netherlands. Despite their bravery, Allied forces were overwhelmed, and the operation ended in failure, though it showcased their determination. During the Winter War between Finland and the Soviet Union, Simo Häyhä became a legendary sniper, reportedly killing over 500 enemy soldiers. His tactics and survival skills became the stuff of legend. Operation Foxley was a British plan to assassinate Adolf Hitler. Though never carried out, the meticulous planning included details such as using snipers near Hitler's mountain retreat in Berghof. The operation's abandonment reflected the Allies' belief that Hitler's poor decision-making was aiding their efforts. During the 872-day siege of Leningrad, supplies were transported across the frozen Lake Ladoga, known as the Road of Life. This perilous lifeline sustained the city's population despite relentless German bombardment and harsh winter conditions. The Battle of Peleliu in the Pacific was one of the most brutal campaigns for U.S. Marines. With temperatures soaring above 115 degrees Fahrenheit and Japanese forces deeply entrenched, the battle resulted in heavy casualties and is remembered as a testament to endurance. In May 1943, the Allies achieved a turning point in the Battle of the Atlantic, sinking 43 German U-boats. This decisive blow to the Kriegsmarine significantly reduced the threat to Allied convoys and marked the beginning of the end for Germany's submarine campaign. One of the most daring rescue missions of the war, The Great Raid liberated over 500 Allied POWs from a Japanese camp in the Philippines. The raid involved a coordinated assault by U.S. Rangers and Filipino guerrillas, with minimal casualties. This Allied operation targeted German V-1 and V-2 rocket facilities, disrupting the development and deployment of these weapons. Bombing raids on Piedmont and other sites saved countless lives in Britain and mainland Europe. A Swedish humanitarian mission, the White Buses, rescued thousands of concentration camp prisoners in the final months of the war. Led by Folke Bernadotte, the operation brought survivors to safety in neutral Sweden. The Battle of the Scheldt in Belgium and the Netherlands was crucial for securing supply lines to the Allied advance. Canadian forces faced fierce resistance, clearing the estuary to enable the use of the vital Antwerp port. Greek partisans conducted daring raids and sabotage missions against Axis forces. Their efforts delayed German troop movements and disrupted supply chains, significantly aiding Allied operations in the Mediterranean. Operation Chastise, known as the Dam Busters Raid, involved using specially designed bouncing bombs to destroy German dams. The daring mission caused significant flooding and disrupted industrial production in the Ruhr Valley. To protect them from bombings, British children were evacuated from cities to the countryside or abroad. This massive operation, known as Operation Pied Piper, uprooted millions of families but saved countless lives. The largest amphibious assault in the Pacific, the Battle of Okinawa, was a grueling campaign. Over 200,000 soldiers and civilians died, making it one of the bloodiest battles of the war and influencing the decision to use atomic bombs. These deception operations used radar-reflecting chaff and small boats to create phantom fleets, distracting German defenses from the real D-Day landings. The success of these ruses highlighted the effectiveness of Allied deception tactics. This naval battle saw the British Royal Navy decisively defeat the Italian fleet in the Mediterranean. The victory secured Allied control of vital sea routes and demonstrated the power of naval intelligence and radar technology. After 4 years of occupation, Paris was liberated in August 1944. French resistance fighters played a key role alongside Allied forces, reclaiming their city and symbolizing the resurgence of freedom in Europe. Navajo Marines developed an unbreakable code based on their language, used to transmit vital military messages in the Pacific theater. Their efforts remained classified for decades, but were instrumental in Allied victories. The firebombing of Tokyo by U.S. forces caused devastating destruction and massive loss of life. The operation highlighted the destructive power of air raids and the human cost of strategic bombing campaigns. The Battle of Manila was a month-long urban combat that resulted in the liberation of the Philippine capital. The fierce fighting caused widespread destruction, but marked a major victory in the Pacific. The SS Athenia was the first British ship sunk in World War II, torpedoed by a German U-boat. The attack, which killed 112 civilians, marked the beginning of the Battle of the Atlantic and galvanized Allied resolve. World War II remains one of the most profound and transformative periods in human history. The stories we've explored showcase the immense complexity of this global conflict, where courage, sacrifice, and resilience collided with the darkest aspects of human behavior. From the daring missions of spies and resistance fighters to the heart-wrenching experiences of civilians caught in the crossfire. Each tale serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of war and the strength found in the face of adversity. These narratives also highlight the importance of unity, ingenuity, and hope. The ingenuity of codebreakers, the bravery of soldiers, the endurance of partisans, and the compassion of those who risked their lives to save others all illustrate humanity's capacity to rise above even the direst circumstances. They remind us that even during times of unimaginable hardship, individuals can make choices that define history, inspiring future generations to uphold values of justice and freedom. As we reflect on these incredible moments, it's essential to remember that the legacy of World War II extends beyond the battlefield. The war reshaped geopolitics, technology, and society, leaving lessons that continue to resonate today. By revisiting these stories, we honor the sacrifices of those who lived through this tumultuous era and ensure that their experiences and lessons are never forgotten. If these stories moved you, consider sharing this video to keep their memory alive. Together, we can ensure that the lessons of World War II continue to inspire and guide us in building a world defined by peace, resilience, and understanding.